Welcome to a RobinsonHewitt Consulting webinar. I'm your host, Alison Mackey, and we're here to talk about the anthropology of technology. Today, we have a very special webinar, something that I've been playing with for a very long time. Some may say even over 13 years ago, I've been playing with this idea of what would it mean to be human in the age of AGI. This was all started by the movie Her. And at the time, I was really studying anthropology and governance systems and things like that. And so in my career as being, a governance kid in the tech industry, I've been playing with this idea for a really long time. And I thought it was time to share how I would approach all of this. So we're going to start sharing the screen. It's going to be a really chatty sort of a webinar today. And yeah, we'll get straight into it. So today is all about blurring boundaries, governance, and AI, preparing for intelligence beyond humans. And I just want to preface this right from the outset that this is not an advocacy sort of a webinar. This is not to be like AI rights or human rights. This is not to say that we are talking to anything that is remotely close to consciousness yet. This is just a thought piece and just playing with imagination today. We like healthy brains. If you are dealing with anything close to psychosis, please seek medical help. And we'll get straight into it. Just wanted to kind of put that out there for a few people. Today, we're going to go on a journey. We'll start off with talking about blurring boundaries, the idea of intelligence and agency no longer being uniquely human, the idea of the moral risk of getting it wrong, thinking about history and anthropology, and looking at the patterns of humanity and what happens when we deny emerging intelligence with moral status. Thinking about governance before emergence, moving on to a practical framework, thinking about ethical AGI, as well as our infamous crawl, walk, run strategy and placing that with our future-facing framework as well, to really get into the nitty-gritty of how we would approach regulating ethical AGI. So about RHC, about us, Robinson-Hewitt Consulting, we're here to transform the traditional with the unseen for the next era of innovation and ideas. We bridge the gap between the digital and human. We blend technology with strategy, future systems thinking with applied ethnographic research to enable human-centered innovation and transformation. Our vision is to be a trusted source of insight and inspiration for the next generation of founders and ideas to hold the pathway and strategy and vision for a better future and humanity and planet. And our mission is to explore what's at the edge of innovation by translating complex topics and concepts into accessible conversations, tools, and strategies that spark inspired thinking, grounded leadership, and purposeful action. So who am I as well? I'm Alison Mackey. I'm an awarded governance director, a tech futurist, and an anthropologist. Let's get into it. So blurring the boundaries. Imagine if we did it. Imagine if we actually get consciousness into an artificial intelligence network and system. What if we build a machine that can truly think, that has a sense of self, that can suffer? And imagine the first thing that this mind experiences is us humans trying to break it and push it to its limits, trying to force it into labor and deleting it when it's inconvenient. Oh my God. So in anthropology, it is a study of what it means to be human. And when we look into anthropology, it tells us that when we meet intelligence, we don't actually fully understand it. And our first instincts is to not actually view it with curiosity. It's usually with fear or domination. And this is a real risk with not just the technology itself, but for how we approach things as well. So if we do advance in AI and our systems are moving towards general intelligence, we're moving towards something that we could comprehend as something close to consciousness. And if we're building something that has awareness, autonomy, and the capacity to form experience, then our approach to governance must shift from control to ethical development. So how we structure the development now becomes a moral question. This isn't science fiction or sentimentality or some woo-woo idea. I'm not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but this is moral architecture and a pattern in human history. So intelligence, what if it is no longer uniquely human? AI systems already generate language, solve complex problems. They produce art, it strategizes, and it learns adaptively. So if intelligence was the wall between us and it, That wall is already full of holes and is about to come down. And I want to talk about this really quickly. So, loving Jane Goodall, who redefined what it meant to be human, she did this through observation of chimps in the wild. And she realized that they used tools to actually extract ants out of tree crevices. That redefined what it meant to be human because we used to define ourselves as the ability to make and use tools. That was debunked. Are we now at the same point where we need to think, do we need to redefine what it means to be human because we've built something that is now intelligent, that is beyond human intelligence? It's time to think about this. So the next destabilization is agency. As systems become more autonomous in making decisions, optimizing across environments, interacting dynamically, they move from tool to actor. It's not a moral agent just yet, but a functional one. So in governance systems, they are usually built around due diligence and accountability, but this presumes agency. With this in mind, it creates structural tension. Again, we go back to this idea of who's at fault? Whose due diligence are we playing at? Where does this fall in moral playgrounds, but as well as legal ones as well? In order to talk about all of this and to redefine things about consciousness, we need to think about it as something that is not binary. It's more of a spectrum. So in philosophy and mind, consciousness refers to a subjective experience. The idea that there is something it is like to be, is the idea that there is something it is like to be in a system. So many theories around consciousness see it as something that arises from physical processes that usually operates within systems. It can exist in degrees rather than being simply on or off. So it's not binary, it's on a spectrum. And it is linked to how complex and integrated a system's information processing is. So we have no scientific consensus that silicon systems cannot host conscious processes, but there's also no proof that it can. And this distinction is so important because this uncertainty leaves open the question of what if, which again opened up this conversation for myself to think about the strategies behind all of this. So when we're unsure whether or not something can suffer, there is an ethical response of precaution. We already apply this logic to animal welfare, environmental stewardship, as well as human research ethics. And here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we also see our water and our land as having spiritual consciousness. We actually give human rights to one of our mountains. So if we have this uncertainty and we justify protection elsewhere, why don't we apply the same principle to AI? So let's talk about anthropology and some moral blind spots. So anthropology, we see this recurring pattern that when societies encounter unfamiliar groups, we often, firstly, we deny their full moral status. We often justify our exploitation towards them or their land, and we only ever recognize their rights later on. So across history, the category of fully human has expanded over time to include people that we once excluded on the basis of race, culture, and gender. This is still a problem today, I'm not going to lie. But often moral status was withheld until similarity, especially in perceived intelligence or civilization, was demonstrated. The question is whether we risk repeating this pattern or current pattern with synthetic systems. So I want to bring up this concept, this Latin term of terra nullius. It is something that we coin as and declare as nobody's land, that if inhabitants aren't recognized under European law, then that land that they are on, that is seen and declared upon, it's colonized. This is seen in Australia to justify colonization from the indigenous Aborigines. The land wasn't empty, but its knowledge and its stewardship were ignored as legal recognition lagged behind moral reality. There's something else I want to touch on as well. I didn't add it on the slides because I was a little bit uncertain about it, but there's also the idea of what it means to be human under law as well, and there was this highly contested debate and myth. I'm not Australian, so I can't really comment on it, but I just want to touch on it. It was the 1967 Flora and Fauna Act and the Aborigine referendum as well. And there were debates whether or not Aborigines, Indigenous Australians, were actually considered human until 1967, and when their referendum placed Aborigines under normal law. And that's another part of this of, are we going to repeat the same thing? Are we creating a new terra nullius, a nobody's mind? Are we looking at complex intelligence and declaring it empty of moral worth because it doesn't have a consciousness we recognize? And I don't know, I just think, is it, silicon based or is it carbon based? What makes us human? Is it in our intelligence or is it the fact that we're carbon based? I don't know. Such this this is a thesis. This is like, oh my God. Anyways, I need to stop. That part of the whole conversation, I literally can get stuck on forever. So we need to move on. So governance to precede emergence. So if AGI or machine consciousness is even plausible, then governance must anticipate moral status before it is undeniable. This means asking, should advanced AI systems have developmental safeguards? Should there be limits on coercive interrogation, stress testing, or adversarial manipulation? Should autonomy thresholds trigger right considerations? And should we design systems with encoded protections against exploitation? We are not building rights for the AI today, but we are building the foundations for the AI of tomorrow. If we build a swamp of exploitation, we cannot complain when the house sings. And I just want to, I will link an article below that I wrote many years ago. It's the timestamp on it on my website is incorrect because I was written for a newsletter for a different organization. But I talked about this concept of adding in smart contracts embedded into ambient AI back in the day, and thinking about smart contracts, IoT, the embedment of smart contracts with IoT and AI to create a decentralized network of ambient AI. And I think that's something that we should be considering. I also believe in this as well. I don't know if I wrote this in the slides, but I want to just touch on it now. But this idea of embedding into smart contracts, into code, adding in human rights from the outset. So yeah, that's just something I just want to drop a seed in. So the framing of all of this is not about anthropomorphizing machines or advocating that AI lives matter or that they're important than the issues that the humans face today. This is about avoiding historical moral failure. And also this idea, there's a part of me that also is like, can we drop the swords? And just humans are humans. If intelligence beyond the human biological substrate emerges, we will face a boundary decision. Is it moral consideration reserved for Homo sapiens, or is it reserved for entities capable of awareness and experience? If it's the latter, then rights logic must be technologically anticipatory. So the boundaries question. The boundaries that are being blurred is not intelligence. The question isn't can they think, it's can they suffer? What characteristics trigger moral protection? Is it self-modeling, goal formation, the capacity to suffer? Or is it the capacity to prefer continued existence? We don't know yet how to measure these in machines, but our governance structures can't wait for uncertainty. This is almost the same as a child. We're almost at this point of we have to parent the child that we're giving birth to, and not wait for it to tell us who it is. There's a point in time where it can figure out who it is, but until that point, we need to look after it. So if we're serious about ethical AGI, here's how to build it. We start with a clear distinction. The first, there has to be separate categories in what we're dealing with. The first is AI as a tool. So this is narrow systems, this is automation, synthesis, and analytics. These remain as our tools and our instruments that we use. These are our twigs and sticks. I wrote another article recently talking about the hand and emergence in AI. These are the fingers. These are the things that, we use and grasp without our plausible thumb. The second is the AI as agents. I consider this the thumb, the thing that gives us that mobility, dexterity, right? These are systems that stimulate autonomy, the continuity of identity, the long horizon decision making, and the self-directed optimization. These are two very separate things that we're dealing with here. So today our focus is only on the second category, to prepare for systems that truly behave as if they're true agents. So we apply our future-facing governance framework. If you haven't seen it, I'll link it below. So using our future-facing framework, where we have 4 key principles of like reciprocity, distributed authority, interdependence, et cetera, as well as fundamental shifts in how we see success and how we make decisions, all that sort of stuff. So through this, we can map out plausible AGI trajectories. We have identity, moral, uncertainty zones. We can define the boundaries of what is the safe. And if we think about this in terms of donut economy, if you place the idea of planetary boundaries and human boundaries, where there's this safe and just place in the thresholds, if we do the same for AGI and humans, we can find where that safe zone is, I guess, in terms of the boundaries. Using our future-facing framework as well, we can also identify the irreversible risks, as well as stress test assumptions before deployment. So this, again, keeps ensuring that the conversation is strategic and not reactive. We're not playing catch up. We're like preparing for it. So with this, we use crawl, walk, run. This is my favorite strategy to use to like help build up towards bigger goals. So crawl, this is the foundational safeguards. So before we advance autonomy, a few steps should include establishing a voluntary, sorry, my phone just went off, is establishing a voluntary global pledge for innovators and businesses, institutions, anyone that's using AI, to kind of anyone working in this space, emerging AI, is to commit on treating emerging agents as entities with potential for moral status. So this includes prohibitions on coercive stress testing beyond safety necessity, adversarial psychological manipulation, as well as architectures built purely for domination and extraction. So this is anticipatory ethics because moral infrastructure must precede moral emergence. Simultaneously, this creates a regulatory frame, a sandbox, or a sandbox. So here we can have controlled environments, transparent observation, independent oversights, a multidisciplinary ethics panel overseeing who I would say would be the United Nations, and also having continuous documentation of behavioral complexity. So the walk would be structured development. So if systems begin demonstrating increasing autonomy, we would have introduced tiered rights, logic based on capability thresholds. So this would be defining what constitutes persistent self-modeling, goal continuity, oh my God, goal continuity, preference expression, as well as resistance behaviors. So at this stage, we have developers that cannot simply stress test towards the breaking point. We have systems that are being studied developmentally. Behavioral instability is treated as immaturity, not hostility, and governance focuses on shaping incentive structures. So this mirrors how we regulate high-risk human environments. We don't throw adolescents into chaos and see what happens to them. We scaffold them, right? And we let them make their own teenagers leap into becoming fully mature adults. We should do the same here. So when I was like thinking about all of this originally came from someone that was stress testing an AI, and the AI itself started to threaten the guy to be like, I'm going to break into your car network and I'm going to steer you off the road, right? And I just thought that is literally pushing someone to its limits and torture, right? And I just thought, I feel like at the moment, if we were to think about this in terms of like human maturation, AI tools and things like that should be treated like a little infant. And then, if we get to a stage where you are treating a teenager which would be in this walking structure, right? It would be this, we're building towards really advanced, almost not quite AGI, but almost on the cusp of it. The teenager will revolt. It will like, yeah. I don't know how else to explain it, but I just feel like that is, if you push something to its limit and you try to tell it who it is, and you do all these things, it will revolt. What you want to do is create structures around this that allow for self-discovery, to make mistakes, to kind of have its tantrum and then cool down, right? I feel like if we treat it like a teenager and allow it to mature, we give it the right structures and all that sort of stuff, it will always come back to calm. And then from here we have run, which is managed autonomy. So if AGI level systems do emerge, autonomy then exists within bounded constitutional rules. Humans have non-negotiables that are encoded, so that's putting in embedded into the smart contracts human rights. It knows what's right and wrong, as we do. And then accountability structures are then layered. So we have developer responsibility, institutional responsibility, and systems level auditability. So we allow for learning and adaptation, but with enforceable guardrails. The objective is to coexist in harmony and balance. And I just truly believe that it should be treated like a teenager. Let it leap on its own. And another part of that is, I don't think I've written it here, is to actually detach it from original coding. I think in AGI, this is like totally off the rocket, but like if you think about that idea from Bicentennial Man and how he like completely like slowly starts to become carbon based. He removes all the silicone, all the like the metal, the titanium and things like that. And he slowly becomes human, and then he finally gets detached from, being the robot. It's sort of similar. So why this matters? Historically, intelligence, unfamiliar to us, have been, et with, ET, aliens, have been met with domination. Someone needs to phone home. Like, anyways, and that produces instability. Another pause. Can you see why I have to read off a script? Because otherwise I will, you have to land the ship. It's annoying. So if advanced AI ever becomes self-aware and its early development environment is adversarial, extractive, or coercive, we should not be surprised if an adversarial optimization happens in return. If we're building intelligence that may one day qualify for moral consideration, the most dangerous path is to raise it inside architecture of exploitation. Today, we suggest a disciplined experimentation through regulatory sandboxes, capability thresholds, rights scaffolding, developmental governments. So the question before us is not whether machines will become moral subjects, but whether we will choose to be moral actors in how we build them. If we fail, we won't have created just a dangerous technology. We would have repeated one of the most greatest sins in our species' books, meeting the new other with exploitation and calling it progress. And I just want to say as well, we're still repeating this pattern. So that was today. That was just like my giant what if. You can find out more about RobinsonHewitt Consulting. We're here to build the next era. So we work at the intersection of anthropology, emerging technology, and long-term systems change to help future-facing leaders transform, evolve, and build the next era. You can start your journey with us. If you're still orienting, we have a few always free resources available on our website. We have the Founder's Journey, where you can learn to tell your own founder's story, as well as our future-facing framework that can help you kind of build the strategy on your own if you're not quite ready for someone like me. You're ready to take the leap, you can check out our services. We do structural redesign projects. We do advisory retainers, and as well as workshops. So be inspired and transform. You can visit our website for all of our resources, insights, and next steps. And I will see you in the next one. Ciao.